How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massa Beer Reviews, back with a little bit of, actually, this is kind of like worlds colliding kind of stuff going on right now, because we have Homebrew, that's nothing new. We have Mystery Beer, that's nothing new. But when you combine them, Homebrew Mystery Beer, yeah, worlds colliding. It's happened before. My buddy Carson sent me off some Mystery Beer that was some of his Homebrew, but this one's kind of like a little bit different in that I know it's Homebrew, but I have no idea what it is. Comes courtesy of my boy, Flash Gordon. Yeah, he sent me off this. He said it comes from his boy, Sweet Lou. So we'll see how this sucker fares. I have a little bit of crib notes over there to tell me what's what. I have not peeked at them, because that's what I do. And we'll see what's what. What is that? It's either stout or barley wine. I'm leaning barley wine. Why? Because of the way the head is colored. How tight it is. There's this extra mahogany color going into like this little bottom crevasse that you guys can't see in the camera. Yeah, it looks more like barley wine than imperial stout. Rich kind of malted malt ball colored head, kind of that rich mahogany, not black colored body on it. Let's see what this sucker has in the nose. It's vanilla. There's some kind of vanilla, maybe vanilla and like it's probably a combination of vanilla bean and a barrel aging process. And by process, I mean it's like they soaked like cubes, like oak staves or oak cubes or something like that in a spirit and then added it to like kind of like a homebrew and fermentation. Because there's this rich bourbon characteristic to it. There's this nice soft vanilla to it. That could be all barrel, could be all those kind of things, could be that spirit coming through. But where I'm really kind of lost is the actual beer itself. I was kind of looking at it going, okay, it's all barley wine. I could see this being something a little bit more than barley wine. I could see it being a stout, a richer stout, at least on the nose. But yeah, it has all those rich kind of caramel, vanilla, toffee, kind of delicious kind of spirity notes with a little bit of roasted malts. It's barley wine. What am I saying? It's not a stout, it's a barley wine that has some kind of oak staved cubed vanilla thing going on with it. Let's dive in. Cheers. Okay. One more sip. So, still sticking to a barley wine here. But there were so many oak chips soaked in spirit thrown in here. And by that I mean it has this bourbon barrel kind of characteristic to it. Actually, it's probably more like a rye barrel more than bourbon. Though the reason why I'm not quite sure about that is because there's so much oak tannin in this. It's just a little bit too much for me. It's so woody. It's so oak tannin that it's like to the nth degree. And that's kind of where it gets a little bit hard to kind of dissect and discern the beer itself. It's barley wine. It has to be. Although there's this chocolate kind of thing in the nose. Once you take that sip, it's just like, poof, oak tannin dries out your palate. And really kind of keeps all the other good portions of the beer from coming through. Yeah, I just think this is just a little bit too aggressive with the wood. And I get what's going on here. You're like, okay, I'm going to make a barley wine. I want to bourbon barrel age it. It's hard to find a bourbon barrel the size that a home brewer can use. So you're like, okay, let's just get some oak chips. We'll soak them in my favorite kind of bourbon. And then that'll impart the bourbon kind of flavor that I'm looking for going. And again, I keep saying bourbon. I should probably say rye. I think that's where I might be wrong too. Like I said, because it's got this kind of, it's so oaky, I might be confusing that with rye, but we'll say spirit for the sake of conversation. And just soaking it and being like, okay, I'm going to impart all that kind of delicious vanilla booziness of all those oak chips into the beer when I introduce them. But you forget about that oak tannin. And it's just so aggressive. It's so drying that give it several years, which this kind of beer, it actually hold up to that kind of time. Granted, there wasn't a big hiss on this. Burps, excuse me. So I don't know if it's going to hold up for the long haul, because there might be a lot of negative oxygen there to the point where it's actually like going, not sideways, but kind of oxidizing already. Yeah, it's somebody 12.5% barley wine, spirit-soaked chips. Way too aggressive on the tannins. I'm just going to stick to my guns and say rye. Even though I think it might just be straight bourbon with a ton of tannin, I'm going to go rye with vanilla bean. I want to throw that vanilla bean in there because I don't think that's coming all from the chips. Done and done. Let's see what the old mystery beer cheat sheet has to say. Mystery beers. It's an old ale. Fair enough. Barley wine. Works for me. From all Hudson Valley, New York malts. Very cool. I appreciate that. Age on HV Hudson Valley Distillery bourbon-soaked wood chips. So there you go. I don't get an ABV in this, but if you're talking about an old ale kind of barley wine, I'm assuming it's right around that 12.5%. There was no vanilla bean in here, so you're getting all that wood from those soaked chips. But really, the one thing that on this beer that is, I don't want to sit here and say it's an overt negative, but it's just too far in one direction, is that level of oak tannin on it, and that it just so overpowers everything else in the beer that I think it actually does it a major disservice. When I talk about hazy, sometimes I kind of dive into this kind of carbonic acid thing, and I talk about this carbonic acid kind of ruins these beers for me. And it's much the same as that, in that it's not necessarily a negative overt off flavor, but it almost acts like a buffer. Almost acts like a kind of limiter to all the other great parts of the beer that can come out. This is a classic, I think it was KBS 2014. KBS is always a fantastic beer. Founders is kind of a douchebag brewery, but, you know, the beer's pretty fucking good stuff. The 1 year, was it 14 or 12? Regardless, there was 1 year so octane forward, it was really hard to get a lot out of the beer. Now, that's settled over time. That's why I said this might actually work itself out in a bit. But it's fun. It's tasty. There's nothing negative to it. The way the spirit shows up is fine. It's a barley wine through and through, even though I was kind of hemming and hawing between those two things. And I like the way the spirit showed up. It's just how much that oak tannin showed up. It made me think of a rye barrel as opposed to a bourbon barrel, but tasty barley wine nonetheless, especially homebrew. So very fun stuff. So there you go. That's it. That's all you get. Because I'm going to post this on Homebrew Wednesday. It's not going to go up on Mystery Beer Monday. It's just going to be a Mystery Beer Homebrew Wednesday. And we don't talk about those in the best I ever had, all that kind of fun stuff, and just say it's pretty fun stuff. And thank you very much for Sweet Lou for providing the old flash with this bottle so I could actually sit and talk about it. So yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, homebrewers are typically looking for some kind of guidance. Am I that person to give that kind of guidance? I don't know. But in my world, you'd use maybe non-fresh oak chips on this. You would soak the chips and maybe kind of rinse them or soak. I don't, basically move them back and forth between soaking and then clearing them, whether it be in a beer or a test beer or some kind of test batch, or soaking them in water and then re-sterilizing them in alcohol or whatever, and then reintroducing, get that kind of oak tannin drop down a little bit. Do the same process you had. Do the same amount of oak chip kind of dose you had. So, if you put these oak chips in the spirit, the Hudson Valley Distillery spirit, if you're going to do the same time on that, I think it would be perfect. You just need a way less tannin forward kind of wood for this particular beer. So there you go. And let me know what the ABV was, because I'm kind of curious about it. So there you go. Another homebrew / mystery beer in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers. If you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massive. Want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of homebrew right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.